Today we will be having a different video. My last videos were all about my own opinion on certain topics, so I thought about mixing it up. We are going to talk about a crossover I would really like to see in Arknights, and this is welcome to the first episode of crossovers that I wish were real. As a little heads up, this video will be a theorycraft video. I'm not creating a viable or balanced operator. I'm just talking about the possible talents and skills they could have. But now, enjoy the video and don't forget to like and subscribe. For the first episode, I'm going to talk about my favorite game series, the Gunvolt series. The Gunvolt series consists of 5 games: Gunvolt 1, 2 and 3 and Luminous Avenger IX 1 and 2. These games are platformers developed by Inti Creates and remind one of old Mega Man games, making them a spiritual successor to especially the Mega Man Zero and the X games, since they were also developed by Inti Creates. These games have awesome boss battles, good level design and make you go fast, and not to forget the music, which you will hear throughout the video. But now, this is a Arknights crossover, and of course the point of interest are the operators, but let's lay the ground rules first. First of all, we are not doing stats, because otherwise this video will have a lot more fury than it already will have. Second, all operators will be 6-star, just making it easier on myself. Third, everything will be based on the source material. Now then, the operators I picked for this will be Gunvolt, Kieran and Copen. They are the playable characters of these games, so it makes sense. But let's begin with the name giver of these games, Gunvolt. Gunvolt's gameplay is quite simple. Shoot enemies to mark them and then unleash your flash field to shock them. Other than that, he also has some skills. With this we can work. Gunvolt will be a rapid fire sniper. His talent 1, Flash Field. Gunvolt deals less damage with his attacks, but has increased ASPD. He will prioritize the first target hit. Target hit will be marked. When the target has 3 marks or moves out of attack range, Gunvolt will deal arts damage based on stacks until the target is defeated. This talent represents his gameplay. His shots deal minimal damage, but his flash field is a strong suit. It is a more of a focused, stronger enemy type of playstyle, just like fighting a boss in the games. Talent 2, Anthem. When Gunvolt is defeated, instead of retreating, he will be revived by Lumen, granting him more attack, defense and resistance for a few seconds. This effect can only be activated once per deployment. This talent is based on the second chance mechanic you have in the games. Just like in the games, it should give him a second chance. Seeing how he is a sniper, a bit of survivability should be good. The increase in stats mainly come from the lore reason because Lumen, who is the muse, is able to power up adepts like Gunvolt. And obviously it would be really nice if the track Reincarnation would play. Anyway, time to talk about his skills. Skill 1, a Septimal Surge. A skill with automatic recovery, a simple and powerful buff skill. It will increase his attack and the damage dealt by his talent 1. This is just your attack up, gamma and skills like that, just with a different name. In the game, Septimal Surge gives him increased damage for a certain time, so it works quite well in this case. Skill 2, Luxcalibur Grand Stricer. This skill will auto-charge and can be charged twice. The first version will create a sword in his attack range dealing arts damage. A Sarge version will get increased range by 1 tile ahead and 1 tile to each side, and it will deal more damage. This is pretty much what makes Gunvolt in the games Gunvolt. He may be a gunslinger and lightning thrower character, but his skills are burst skills, they deal big chunks of damage at once, so they are meant as like a finishing move for bosses. Luxcalibur in this case is one of his signature skills, and Grand Stricer is a powered up version which can deal a lot more damage based on a score you have acquired previously called Kudos. Skill 3, Voltaic Chain. This would be a global skill. Up to a certain amount of enemies will be bound for the duration of the skills. Afterwards, all enemies present in the chain lines receive arts damage. To clarify, this skill would select targets, and these would then send out chains in either the horizontal or vertical direction. Pretty much the best way to recreate the skill in Arknights. The intention was to turn Gunvolt into a burst operator who has strong single target damage, Since his games are focused around challenging boss fights, meaning single target focus until this target is defeated is the way to go. Next up would be Kieran, the newest addition to the cast. Kieran's playstyle is melee oriented, with good options to gap close using her talismans. Unlike Gunvolt, she doesn't have a big skill list, so her options are a bit more limited. Now then, with this in mind, Kieran would be a dual striker guard. Her talent 1 would be Radiant Feathers. On deployment and upon activating certain skills, Kieran will throw talismans. Enemies can only be hit by one talisman at a time. Afterwards, they are silenced for a few seconds and take additional arts damage when hit by Kieran. Afterwards, the mark disappears. While she is deployed, she will throw talismans in set intervals. This talent is based on her main gameplay mechanic. She throws a talisman and then deals additional damage to the enemy hit by it. It also enables additional skills to be used. It's pretty much her version of the lock-on ability the other two characters possess. Talent 2. Anthem Alternative. When Kieran is defeated, instead of retreating, she is revived. For a few seconds after revive, she shows up as Berserker Gunvolt. This version will push the nearest enemy with huge force. If they reach maximum distance or hit another enemy, they will stop and deal physical damage to all enemies in the surrounding tiles and itself. Afterwards, Kieran will reappear. This talent can only be used once per deployment. This version of Anthem is different from the others present in the game series. Just like in Gunvolt 3, instead of Kieran getting back on her feet, Gunvolt turns Berserk. The action performed is the Voltaic Buster, a powerful finishing move the Gunvolt 3 Gunvolt can perform. In the game, you would have to target an enemy 3 times with Gunvolt and then you can dash into them to perform this finishing move. It pretty much works on any enemy as long as the damage would finish them off. And now with this, we move on to her skills. Skill 1. Sword Combo. This skill has offensive recovery and can be charged twice. Kieran will perform a 3-hit slash, followed by a rising slash and finished with a downward spin. Each hit will deal physical damage. When the skill is charged twice, after the downward spin, plates will appear in the 3 tiles ahead of her, dealing arts damage. The skill is based on her variety of sword techniques she can acquire in the game. The 3-hit strike is a normal attack, the rising slash is the tensile slash, and the downward spin is the rasant slash. The charged version then follows all of this up with a merciful beheading technique. This combo in the game is the most effective when it comes to damage, since it is quite strong and quick. The merciful beheading skill comes from an alternative Kieran version called Kieran XX, where she can do this move. Skill 2. Arc Chain. This skill has automatic recovery. Kieran will throw 3 talismans at the closest enemies. Afterwards, the skill can be reactivated. Kieran will then zip between all marked enemies, dealing arts damage to all of these enemies. During the reactivation, Kieran will become invincible to damage. This skill represents her Arc Chain ability from in-game. In the game, Gunvolt uses his ability to warp Kieran to marked enemies. This move is used to reposition and dodge certain attacks, or to simply move through the levels fast. The invincible comes from the fact that Kieran is not dashing, but instead teleporting to the targeted location. And on to the last skill we go. Skill 3. Hidden 90-second Right, Divine Ruin Heresy. Kieran will seek all enemies around her and attack them. She will then deal a massive instance of arts and physical damage to all enemies inside her range. This skill is her special skill. In the game, it is similar to Gunvolt's Voltaic Chain, being in full screen cover that deals one big instance of damage. The reason for arts damage is that her plate is empowered by lightning in this version. The big damage comes from the fact that, once again, this move deals a big instance of damage and is meant to be a finishing move for boss fights in order to rack up more points. In regards to range, it will be close to Guard Armia's skill 2. With this, we now have 2 characters out of the way and on to the last one, Copen. As you can see, there most likely still is a lot of time left on this video, and this is for a good reason. And now you can call it cheating, but Copen is a difficult one. Since in every game he appears in, he is practically different in terms of combat style. In Gunvolt 1, he uses a shield and his gun. In Gunvolt 2 and IX1, he uses his pots, gun and dashing abilities. In IX2, he uses a chainsaw. And to please everyone, I'm giving all 3 variants a shot at becoming an operator. This means we have a Sentinel Iron Guard for the shield and gun version, a fast redeploy for the dashing version, and a Centurion for the, obviously, chainsaw version. Let's start with Copen from Gunvolt 1 or the Sentinel Iron Guard. Talent 1. Creed Snatcher. Copen projectiles silence enemies hit. This is a simple talent in comparison. In the game, Copen uses the ability of Carrera, a boss to create ammo that disrupts an adept Septimer. And a Septimer can pretty much be an enemy's ability in Arknights, so it fits right in. Talent 2. Beowulf. Copen's attack ignores a certain amount of the target's defense. Once again, a simple talent. In the game, Copen's bullets could not be blocked like other physical projectiles. Usually, Gunvolt can use his flash field to destroy physical projectiles, but it doesn't work for Copen's bullets. Nowadays, you can't really go wrong with armor ignore anyways. Skill 1. Jelustic Gorgon. Copen uses his shield to emit a beam of light. Enemies in this beam of light are bound for a certain duration. One of Copen's many skills. Uses the skill when Elise is defeated. In the game, you can dodge it by looking away, otherwise you are turned into stone. I choose the skill because I thought it would be nice for the defender to have some CC from time to time. Skill 2. Blazing Ballista. Copen fires a projectile in a straight line. This projectile damages all enemies in its path. This projectile leaves an explosion on the 2nd and 4th tile, dealing damage to nearby enemies. The skill is acquired after you defeat Viper, and yeah, it's a blazing projectile that leaves behind these explosions as it travels. The choice for this skill was mainly because we have something similar with Fear Meta, so it makes it easier to imagine. Another option could have been Arrogant Fang, which you will now see footage of. Anyway, time for his last skill. Skill 3. Lust Doppler. Copen creates 4 copies of himself in the surrounding tiles. These copies will cycle if they take damage. Copen can attack enemies blocked by the copies. At the end of the skill duration, these copies will launch into the direction that Copen is facing, dealing damage to all enemies in its path. This pretty much is the classical ultimate skill for an operator. Their in theory strongest ability, so that would be a better pick than Copen's ultimate ability. In the game, Copen gets this ability from Zonder, and it's just part of his finishing move or his boss final phase attack. And just like described in the ability, this pretty much is how it works in the game. He creates those spinning copies of him, this is why it cycles, in order to prevent them from getting too much damage, because they can be destroyed after all. Afterwards, they just dash forward at Gunvolt, dealing damage if he is out of EP or doesn't have P evasion with him. Now, let's move on to Gunvolt 2's Copen and technically IX1's Copen, the fast redeploy. In these 2 entries, Copen is playable and has a lot of new skills and abilities to make use of. And let's put them to use in this Fury Craft. But let's go from top to bottom. Talent 1. Bullet Dash. Upon being deployed, Copen will dash in a straight line. If he hits an enemy, the enemy will be marked and Copen's attack and skills will seek out this target. This talent is based on Copen's main mode of ability and combat, the Bullet Dash. In the game, you use the Bullet Dash to deal focus damage to an enemy and to maneuver through the levels. While Gunvolt can use the safety to mark enemies, Copen has to get up close and personal, but his attacks are stronger in general. In Arknights, it will still give him a strong focus attack as well as an option to attack from range, because Copen is still a gunslinger and not a melee like all of the other fast redeploys. Talent 2. Darkness Trigger. By your 3rd deploy, Copen will activate Lola's Darkness Trigger. In this state, they gain increased attack and stronger skills. When the skill duration ends, Copen will retreat. Instead of Anthem like the others to have, I thought of a more fun approach. Darkness Trigger should be a gimmick that players could play around with, because we don't have effects that activate after a certain amount of deploys. It would also add a bit more of timing to a skill, because sometimes you would need this 3rd deploy in order to deal the last bit of damage needed. In the game, Darkness Trigger is unlocked after beating Plate. It enhances Copen's EX weapons while damaging him if he is not moving or attacking. The auto retreat part should thereby represent the self-damage part of this ability. Skill 1. Broad Circuit. The bits will launch a strong attack at a marked enemy. This enemy takes out damage. If no enemy is marked, it will shoot 3 beams parallel to each other in the direction where Copen is facing. Darkness Trigger. We follow up with additional attacks after the first attack. This is your strong single target burst skill. It is meant to deal damage in big instances to a singular enemy. It should give him a variable way to deal damage to a singular enemy or to just clear out multiple enemies at once depending on the circumstance. In the game itself, Broad Circuit fires a wide spread of multiple beams, and in lock-on it fires the beams focused on a singular target. It is acquired after beating Tessio. The Darkness Trigger version is made up however since it didn't exist back in Gunvolt 2. Skill 2. Photon Detonator. The bits fire a ball of light at the marked target. Upon reaching the target, the ball will detonate, dealing arts damage to all enemies nearby. If no enemy is marked, it is shot in the direction Copen is facing. Darkness Trigger. It will fire a burst of 3 projectiles instead. This is the fast redeploys wave clear skill. It covers area and makes Copen useful for stages where you have to face a lot of smaller enemies. While the Darkness Trigger version should give you enough damage to take care of some of the beefier to medium enemies. In the game, Photon Detonator is acquired after defeating Quim. It attacks the same way as described, and it fires a ball of light that explodes. The Darkness Trigger version does the same, with the only difference being that it only works on lock-on, but I didn't want to give this restriction to the skill. It is quite a fun ability to use, because in this game it can also clear out smaller enemies quite fast, and even take care of some of the more annoying bosses. Skill 3. Shred Storm Twin Shredder. On deploy, Copen will attack all targets in the surrounding tiles. These targets will take massive physical damage. Darkness Trigger. Lola will perform the attack with Copen. Instead of entering Darkness Trigger, she will enter Awakened mode. The damage dealt will be increased. And instead of retreating, Copen stays on the field and his attack range changes to that of a rapid fire sniper until the skill ends. This skill is an even bigger nuke skill, with difference being that for this one you have to get up close and personal and don't have the safety of range. So this pretty much is the payoff. If you deploy it, you can technically still get shot down by an enemy that is strong enough to one-shot you, while Photon Detonator gives you the range in order to stay out of these enemies' ranges. The Darkness Trigger version changes to Awakened mode, because it is much more fitting for the skill. There is a Darkness Trigger version of his finishing move as well, but this is in IX2, which we are going to talk about as a separate operator. In the game, Shred Storm is Copen's special move. In Gunvolt 2, the bits will slash up the entire screen, dealing damage to everything on the screen. Twin Shredder is the move from IX1. In this version, Copen and Lola, in Awakened mode, dash around the screen and deal damage. Since Awakened mode is linked to Anthem, it would make sense for Copen to stay on the field afterwards, but making use of his weapon. Now, let's talk about the last iteration of Copen, the version in IX2, the Centurion. In this game, he discarded his gun for a chainsaw launcher, and he adopted a melee playstyle. Talent 1. Overdrive. When Copen defeats enemies, he builds up Overdrive. After killing 5 enemies, he enters Overdrive state. In this state, his attack and defense increase. This is a lane holding tool that should help him sustain and deal with enemies coming down his lane. In the game, Overdrive mechanic activates when he reaches 1000 kudos and it powers up his suit, giving unlimited bullet dashing. In theory. The reason for choosing 5 enemies is because of the markings that appear around Copen during Overdrive. Each marking could represent one enemy defeated, and the last enemy would then be the activation sequence. Talent 2. Break Shift. After defeating an enemy, Copen uses his bullet dash to dash into enemies in front of him, knocking him back with moderate force. This talent should give him more room to clear out weaker enemies and give him some breathing room against tougher opponents that he is blocking. In the game, Break Shift is your ground dash. Instead of marking an enemy like in the previous games, it knocks them away. It can even knock away a larger object. Because I thought it would be kinda nice since we already have Gabriel Alter who is able to pull enemies, how about we have Centurion Guard that is able to push enemies instead. Now, onto the skills. Skill 1. Boom Razor. Corbin turns his saw into a giant saw that continuously deals damage. At the end of the skill, the saw is fired in the direction Corbin is facing and returns after a short distance traveled. A good skill to help him with clearing a lane, pretty much like Laser Skill 3. In the game, this is an upgrade that can be acquired. Standard melee combo ends with a giant saw usually, and the upgrade then allows it to be fired. It might be one of his best damaging options in the game and most likely could also be in Arknights. Skill 2. Whirling Chopper. Corbin turns his weapon into rotor blades. All enemies in the 8 surrounding tiles are lifted up and get hit multiple times during the skill duration. The skill should give Corbin a bit of CC, and Levitate is just 3 damage while clearing his block count. In the game, a Whirling Chopper is acquired after defeating Vesper. This move can be used to double jump or to take care of aerial enemies. While it may not have the lift-off property in the game, it is quite strong against a certain boss that is knocked away afterwards, so the lift-off property might not be all too far off from what we can see in the game. Skill 3. Colossal Maelstrom. Lola activates Darkness Trigger. Corbin dashes in the direction he is facing, dealing massive physical damage to all enemies in his path. Just like his previous version Skill 3, this is a heavy nuke skill, based off their special attack in the game. And this is the reason why the Darkness Trigger version was not included in the fast redeploy version of Corbin. In the game, once again it would be a full screen cover, but for Arknights I just wanted to have something different, like a more in-front nuke. So I could almost compare it to like Shen's skill 2 or similar skills, but just with a bit more range, like the range of a rapid fire sniper for example. Okay, this should do it. 5 characters with talents and skills, each of them equipped with moves from their series. This video got way longer than I thought. It is by far the longest video I ever made and most likely the longest video I will ever make. And in the end, it is more of a Furiocraft video than I have imagined. Originally I wanted to have it more of like an operator showcase version, but unfortunately I'm lacking the ability to recreate these effects in Arknights themselves. I wish I could show them how they would actually look in the game, but this has to wait for another time. But for now, we have to be satisfied with the version of what would they do if this collab was real. But I am happy with the result. I also wanted to bring some attention to the Gunvolt games because I think they're excellent platformers that everyone should play. But with this, I wish you a good day. If you have more ideas for crossovers, leave a comment. And I will see you again in my next video.